Happy Friday, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation Raiders Today, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, joined by my assistant beat writer, the great Zeke Trezevant. And I want you guys to all know it's a big weekend. I've predicted the Raiders to win 27-17. He's predicted them to win 28-17. But it's a big game for the Raiders, the biggest game of the Josh McDaniels regime. And when I say that, it's not because I think with a loss he'll get fired or with a win he'll get an extension. But as I shared with you during training camp, as teams get better, there are certain things, certain steps franchises take. One of them is winning games when you're not playing well. And number two is winning the games you're supposed to win. This is a game the Raiders should win. They're supposed to win. They need to win. Zeke and I both think they will. Good morning, Zeke, or hello, Zeke. How you doing?
Hey, Hondo, doing well, man. First and foremost, thank you for having me. I always appreciate it. But yes, I agree with you 1,000% on this one, man. This is one of those ones that when they released the schedule, the Raiders absolutely had to win. Didn't matter when in the season it was scheduled, they had to win this game. Now with it coming off of the Buffalo loss, 1-1, yeah, they definitely have to get this W.
There was no shame in losing to Buffalo on the road. As I sat there in the press box watching, it just came down to how they lost, which was bad. But it only counts one, and you move on. I think Allegiant's going to be lit. There's going to be a ton of Steeler fans now because the Steelers travel and they travel really well. But it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. All right, Zeke, let's talk about this game a little bit. I've narrowed it down to three things. Number one, a team motto is physical. The Raiders need to be physical. They need to hit. They need to hit hard. That's how the Steelers play. That's how the Raiders need to play. Your thoughts?
Listen, so it's funny you say that because we actually had a moment to speak to Robert Spillane yesterday, and he actually said something very similar in terms of the Steelers play tough. That's how they play. That's how they're trained to play. He even went as far as to say, hey, Mike Tomlin used to say that was AFC North football. That was just tough, hard-nosed football, and that Spillane was trying to bring it out here. So the Raiders definitely have to match that vibe. They have to match that intensity because the Steelers, specifically on defense, they bring it. They bring it, the intensity. They're flying around. It's hard to not notice just how good they are and how physical they are.
All right. On offense, my motto's been attack, attack, attack. The Raiders just can't come out and be passive. They've got to come out on the attack. I think that's critical in this game. Your thoughts?
You got to stretch the field. You have to stretch the field. And even if you're unsuccessful, you have to at least attempt to stretch the field. I can understand, 2 or 3 or 4 long passes and maybe some don't happen, don't complete, but you still have to shoot for it. They absolutely have to keep their foot on the pedal because again, they lead this team. If the offense is not doing what they're supposed to do, the games could very well end up just like they did in Buffalo last week.
The Raiders defense was punished last week. I thought they were great for the first 45% of the game, but they just ran out of gas because the offense didn't do anything. If you're Raiders defense, I think your motto has to be make Kenny Pickett beat me with his arm.
Yeah, and that would play directly into the Raiders' strength. If Pickett beats you, then you kind of just have to live with it, right? Like you have to make sure that you make him play to what you do well and what he doesn't necessarily do well. So in terms of the Raiders defensively, I think if the game fits into their favor a little bit, in terms of the Raiders offensively, they definitely have to make sure they come to play.
It's a monstrous deal to get Jacoby back, but they've got to get Hunter involved.
Oh, listen, I was going to ask you about that. Like, I thought maybe I, like a lot of other people, may have been overreacting after week 1. But then week 2 happened. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I was more encouraged or more discouraged that he got the completion, but it was so late in the game, So,
yeah, I agree.
And that was with Myers out. So it was like, when else is he going to get it if Myers is not playing and he's still not getting looks? But yes, I do agree with you. Renfro, you have to find a way to use him. In terms of Myers being back on the field, that's huge for your play caller, right? There's so many different things that Myers brings to the table, whether he's, the first person on the route tree or not, he helps out your offense tremendously. So I think him being back is going to help the offense get back on track.
And don't forget Trey Tucker. I mean, his speed, they need that top end speed desperately. to do some stuff. All right, I want to dig in a little bit with you on the Raiders because I think there was a mentality sometimes in Raider Nation the moment anything goes bad. All right, season's over. It's a dumpster fire. And man, I can understand because this is a franchise where the fans have been disappointed for so long. I was talking with a buddy of mine who is a beat writer for the Lions, and I grew up in Michigan, so I'm covering. I knew the Lions well, and he asked me one time. He goes, "What's the biggest difference between Raiders and Lions?" And I told him the Lions fans expect them to lose. It's the mentality, so they don't ever get hurt. They expect them to implode. They expect something bad or sinister to happen. I remember one time I was at a Lions game, covering a Lions game, and they're down, I don't know, 14, 18 points in the fourth quarter and the start of the third quarter. They come back to get within 3. Then they take a lead in the fourth quarter and lose. And the fans gave them an ovation as they went off the field. Man, you tried. Here's your trophy, your participation trophy. And I said, with Raider fans, they don't care how many times they've been let down. Super Bowl, baby. I love that. I love covering a team with that passion. To me, it's just great. But man, the overreaction after week 2 was amazing to me when they were on the road against a Super Bowl contender. I was a little bit surprised. Were you not a little bit surprised?
Very, very much so. And to your point, what I would say is this: is I think we would both agree a lot of the passion from the Raiders fan base comes from the history, right? Just like Lions fans,
Yeah.
they're so beat down because of the history of the team. It's a little bit of the opposite for the Raiders. They have that history of championship pedigree, so they want that, right? Raiders fans want that, or fight for it. Get there, get close. But with that said, yes, I think the overreaction has been it's been kind of wild to see. I don't know if it's just expectations of Raiders, as a team, or if their fans just don't understand how good Buffalo is, or maybe week 1 kind of pulled the wool over everybody's eyes in terms of the Bills. But yes, a lot of overreaction. Like, what did you expect to happen, right? 4 turnovers from your offense. You're missing your second best wide receiver. You're on the road. We spoke in the press conference last week, and we asked Coach about the Bills being a wounded animal, and he said no. I think after last week we would have to disagree with that. They looked like a wounded animal who was upset. They are not happy. They were not happy about that loss last week, and they came in. They took it out on the Raiders. So no need to overreact. Whether you lose by 2 or 20, in the NFL, like you said, it all counts the same. So you start both games on the road, your first 2 games on the road, and you split. I think you couldn't have really asked for much more than that, realistically.
All right, now I got to turn the attention. I wrote an article yesterday that went viral, and it was me talking to some NFL team executives about the Raiders. I mean, it went viral. I'm curious your thoughts on what other NFL team executives had to say to me about the Raiders.
I think it's accurate. I'll be honest with you. I actually read the article multiple times because I agreed so thoroughly with everything both executives said. I think the opinions they gave were unbiased. There was no emotional ties to it. It's just a very analytical look at the team and where they are. I loved it. And it kind of gives you an idea of, how not only everybody else looks at the Raiders, but just how close your ideas and how close your thoughts are on the team to reality. So listen, I loved it. I can only imagine how the people at home loved it. So yes, it was a great article.
Right now, I need to go back because something that they said that really stood out to me. Both guys said they thought the Raiders scheme was good, but it was different players making mistakes. It wasn't, okay, this guy sucks, you got to get rid of him. And I thought that was fascinating to me. and off what didn't make it in the article was one of the executives said to me, we now live in an era where, training camp is so small. You can't do, you don't do much in training camp. And people forgot Jimmy got no throws in the offseason with his guys. None. I thought that was very deep. And he said, because of his injuries, he goes, our quarterback's throwing with our wide receivers all offseason. And he goes, Jimmy got none of that. He goes, I think that's a very fair thing. People need to give Jimmy a little bit of time. And I thought that to me was deep. What are your thoughts on what he said there?
A good hundred. I mean, you got to. It's simple logistics, right? Jimmy, like you said, he didn't get the throws in. Jacobs wasn't there the whole offseason. Myers is new to the team, and so you have a new receiver playing with a new quarterback playing with a new running back who did like come on, right? Like that's very very accurate. Like you need time to build a team in the offseason. Then you also throw in the fact that there's one less preseason game to get ready, right? So now basically your first week or two of the season is essentially a preseason game of sorts. So yes, I think that's a very good point. I think a lot of people sit at home and they don't, they're watching it from an entertainment standpoint, not from these guys go out there and practice every single day when we don't see them after hours, they're practicing and watching film. So I think when you look at it from that standpoint, you got to kind of be real with yourself and say, hey, there's going to be some struggles at first.
All right, Zeke, let's talk about the crowd. Steeler Nation, man. And that's not even fair.
They
It's
travel.
Raider Nation. Okay.
Yes.
Steeler fans, let's not
Yes.
even use the term Steeler Nation.
Yes.
Steeler fans are one of the best traveling teams in the National Football League. I mean, that's just the way that they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think you could be 50-50,
Easy.
60-40 after last week. Steeler fan, your thought. I know a ton. I've probably got 10 to 20 friends that are Steeler fans that are all going to be there. In fact, asking, can I stay at your house? Are we going to go to eat? We're going to go, several of us are going to go to eat before the game. That's going to be a mammoth Steeler crowd on Sunday night. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's going to be. So this is what I think is going to be what's going to happen. Similar to you, 50-50, 60-40. But I think that 60-40 could go either way. I do think Raider Nation knows, like we've been saying, right? They not a must win, right? But it's a must win, right? They have to win the game. So I think Raider Nation is going to show up. But like you said, Steelers, they have to be top 3, maybe top 5 in the league in terms of fans traveling. What do you have? The Packers, Cowboys, Raiders, obviously. And then what Bills Steelers really, right? So you gotta be wary. You really don't have a home game when you're playing against the Steelers. Like a large portion of that is going to be Steelers fans. Luckily, you are talking about the Raiders here, so their fans will show up as well. So 60-40 at worst. But I also think it depends how the game goes, right? I think when it first gets there, it's going to sound like 50-50, depending on who wins. That's going to tell you what it ends up being in terms of 60-40.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I was talking when I was in the Buffalo press box, I was talking with a couple of national writers, and they were asking me about Allegiant. And I explained to them, the casinos buy so many tickets and there's so many tickets up on the secondary market, the ancillary markets. And I said, but and yes, in Oakland, they had the advantage, but they also didn't have the cash to do the things that they get to do now. It's a catch 22 that the Raiders are in, but I find it fascinating that each week now that goes into, okay, who are they playing and do they travel? That's amazing to me how that's in the conversation every week.
So I will also say that not only that, right, depending on how well they're doing in terms of fan bases, that determines how well they travel as well. So this is what I'll tell you. I actually spent a long time and I think this in the ticket sales game for NFL teams. So I'm like you, like I find it amazing, like, hey, how many fans of this fan base is going to show up, et cetera, et cetera. So it's always fun to watch. It's always fun to see a stadium go from 0 to filled up overnight or over the day. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the fans turn out. But I think Raider Nation is going to show out. First home game of the season. They've watched their guys be on the road and the fans couldn't affect the game. Raiders fans couldn't affect the game. So I think they're going to take advantage of that opportunity on Sunday to do so.
All right, Zeke, if the Raiders win on Sunday, and we both predict they will, give me a name of somebody we're not talking about now, but we will be talking about on Monday with a win.
If they win on Sunday, a name that we're not talking about now that I think we will be talking about, man, I think if you got to start with the defense. I think there's going to be a couple. I think Kuntz is going to be one. I think Diablo is going to be another one. I'm a big fan of Diablo, undersized linebacker, and he's playing well. So I think he's going to be a name. And then honestly, I think Talk to me. Talk to me, Hondo.
Okay, I want everyone to see that you just invited me to interrupt you.
Yes,
You
please.
said
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Diablo. He's an undersized linebacker. Like you're an undersized beat writer compared to me, right? So
Yes.
Diablo's like your spirit animal on the team.
Hey, listen. I tell everybody, listen. You, whatever position you played when you played sports, you take that mentality everywhere. So I was an undersized defensive end. I swear to you, I always look for the undersized guy that's overperforming. I like that guy. So yes, I do like the guys that I see a lot of similarities with that I identify with. So Diablo's that guy for me. Spillane obviously is another one. But I think Spillane and Diablo have been playing well. So I think maybe Diablo doesn't count because we have been talking about him. So I would say, yeah, Spillane, Diablo. I want Tyree Wilson to play well, man. I do. I know they're rushing him back, excuse me, but I want him to play very, very well, man. I want to see him have a good game. So yeah, I think it's going to be linebackers, and then you also have I would say maybe Epps. I think Epps is one of the low key names that we haven't really talked about much. So
He's
I
been
think
playing well.
yeah, I think he's going to play well, and Trayvon as well. I think both of those guys they're gonna have bounce back games this week.
Well, everyone, all right, we haven't been talking about Kuntz or Trayvon. So, but well, we've been talking a lot about Spillane and Diablo and Epps. So,
Exactly.
okay, so I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you two names, an offense and a defensive name. Michael Mayer. I think
Yeah.
this is a guy. This week they've put a lot of emphasis in practice on getting more guys involved. I think we're going to see that. I think we're going to see more of Hunter, but we've been talking about Hunter. But I think Michael Mayer, this is going to be. I can see him with 3 or 4 catches this week, um, doing some stuff over the middle. I think Jimmy. They spent a lot of time with Jimmy and his guys, just trying to get him comfortable. But on defense, this is a name that a lot of people aren't talking about, and it's a guy that I believe in, and it's a guy that I think can and I've been believing him a long time. Malcolm Kuntz. This guy's been here long enough now. He's got a fish or cut bait. The Raiders need him.
Yeah.
And you have every right to expect more out of Malcolm than Tyree based on where they are today.
Mhm.
And they need Malcolm Kuntz to show up. They need him to benefit from
Yes.
some of those double and triple teams on Max Crosby. And they need Malcolm Kuntz really, really bad. Lastly, I want to talk to you about one last thing. AJ Cole and Daniel Carlson are so good that I almost think, and this happens with, um, this happens with special teams when they're so good they're ignored, and people don't talk about AJ and Daniel just because they're so good, and so I feel like we need to talk about them because I don't think Raider fan appreciates how good these guys are, right or wrong.
You're right, but I'll say this. They're underappreciated because, and I can't speak about previous seasons, but just in the first 2 games, there just hasn't been a use of them for the most part, right? They haven't really, obviously they've had to punt the ball, they've had to kick the ball, but it has like a game hasn't come down to it. A game hasn't swung on a bad kick. So I think that's part of the reason why they're being underestimated. But the thing is that that's one of those positions. Those are 2 of the positions in terms of your kickers that you never want to have to second guess, right? You may not ever have to use them, but you want to know that when the time comes, you don't have to say, can he do this or can he do that? It's no, we need a punt, we need a kick, throw him out there. And the Raiders are fortunate to be in that situation. So very underrated, but I think when the time comes that the team is depending on them, that's when everybody else outside of the organization will see how valuable both of those guys are.
All right, we're going to end with a 2-point conversion today. The 2 biggest keys to a Raider win. Number 1, they've got to win the turnover battle. They're not good enough to beat Pittsburgh and to beat themselves. Number 1, they got to win the turnover battle. Number 2, and this is a monster one, and it's a big one, is not just turnovers. They have got to be efficient on 3rd down. They've got to be able to get some conversions to get their defense, even if they don't score, to get their defense a rest. So 3rd down conversion, which to me is time of possession. So we're going to go time of possession. Turnovers are very big for the Raiders this week. That's my 2-point conversion. How about you?
Run the ball. run the ball, and you got to get some positive yardage. I would say run the ball, and two, mix up the play calling. Both of my 2 points are on the offense. I truly believe the defense is fine if the offense is doing their job. I really do. I really do. I think we saw week one what the defense can do when the offense is doing their job, right? So I think if the offense runs the ball, holds onto the ball a little bit longer, keeps their defense off the field, and again, mix up the play calling on offense, I think they'll be fine. But the offense has to carry the defense here. It has to
I
go that
don't
way.
care. I don't care if they use the pass to set up the run. If the run
Agreed.
ain't working, don't keep doing it. Use the pass to set it up. But you're right, they got to run. He's the
Yeah.
great Zeke Trezevant. He's our assistant beat writer at Sports Illustrated Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders. We love the guy. He does a great job. You can read his work each and every day. We appreciate him. I'm Hondo Carpenter. Remember, you've been watching the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, also part of the Fans First Sports Network. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. We'll see
Thanks,
you
Al.
at Allegiant Stadium.